not because they sear evil, but because they've learned how to perform goodness better than you. And that creates a deep kind of alienation, a feeling that everyone is saying the right thing, but no one really means it. Nietzsche called this cultural sickness decadence, not luxury or excess, but a kind of spiritual rot, a system that punishes authenticity, rewards manipulation, and slowly hollows us out. So, what do? We start by seeing clearly. Power isn't set gone. Its seps just changed costume. And the people who succeed today are often not the kindest, but the most adaptable. The ones who can sense what others want to hear and say it, even if they believe none of it. That doesn't mean you have to become fake, but it does mean this: if you want to rise in this world, you must learn to see through appearances and act without apology. Nietzsche's ideal wasn't the wolf in sheep's clothing, it was the person who stops pretending, who reclaims their will, lives from within, and doesn't need to deceive others to claim their place. Here steps a question worth asking: where in your life are you hiding your power just to make others comfortable? What would change if you stopped apologizing for your strength? That sets the deeper challenge here: not to dominate, but to stop playing small in a world that only respects strength when it's disguised. Up next, we will confront something even more painful: the just world fallacy, and what happens when you realize life doesn't play by the rules you were taught. We all carry a story deep in our bones. You may not remember where you first heard it. Maybe a teacher told you, or a parent. Maybe it was a cartoon or a fairy tale. But the message was clear: if you are good, good things will happen to you. Be kind, be patient, do your best, and life will reward you. It sets a beautiful idea, and it sets also a lie. Psychologists call it the just world fallacy. The belief that the world is inherently fair, the people get what they deserve. We cling to it because it gives us hope, meaning, and a sense of control. But Nietzsche saw the danger. He saw what happens when that illusion cracks. Because when you have lived your life by the rules, when you have worked hard, loved deeply, tried to do right by others, and still get overlooked, betrayed, or broken, something inside begins to collapse. You don't instead just question the system. You start to question yourself. Maybe I wasn't set good enough. Maybe I was naive. Maybe the world just isn't set worth it. And here sits where many people go numb. They give up, not just on success, but on meaning, on striving, on self respect. Nietzsche understood this breaking point, and he refused to offer false comfort. He said, in essence, the world is not fair, and it never was. The universe does not hand out prizes for being good. It simply is. That sep's a hard truth, but it sep's also liberating, because if the world isn't set fair, then your suffering isn't always your fault. And more importantly, you don't instead have to wait for someone to reward you. You can stop playing by the old script, the one that says be good and you still be chosen. You can choose yourself. You can define your values, build your path, create meaning, even when the world offers none. This was Nietzsche's best radical insight: that the fall of comforting illusions is not a tragedy. It sets a beginning. It sets the moment when you stop seeking approval and start seeking power, not over others, but over your own life. That sets what he meant by the will to power: not domination, not conquest, but the deep inner drive to rise, to call from life even when it's hard, even when it's unfair. especially then. So, if you have been feeling disillusioned, if the world has disappointed you, if life hasn't set rewarded your goodness, don't stet. Let that pain turn into bitterness. Let it become fuel. Let it sharpen your sight. Let it free you from waiting to be chosen so you can choose yourself. Next, we still explore what happens when good people lose touch with their will and how Nietzsche Sipp's concept of the will to power can reignite something you may have forgotten, your ability to act, to shape, to rise. You've seen it. Someone you love, maybe even you, once full of passion, fire, dreams, slowly goes dim. They still go through the motions. They show up, they smile, they spore, but something seps missing. Their will, that inner force that once moved them forward, has gone quiet, and it happens more often than we realize, especially to good people. Why? Because in a world that distrusts power, those who want to live ethically often feel a strange pressure to make themselves smaller. We confuse humility with passivity, kindness with compliance. We learn, over time, to suppress our desires, our ambition, our hunger. Nietzsche saw this as a spiritual crisis. He called it the death of the will, not a physical death, but a kind of soul sickness. When you lose your will, you don't collapse all at once. You just slowly stop caring. You stop believing your actions matter. You hand over authorship of your life to the world around you. You become, as Nietzsche put it, reactive, always responding, never creating. This is what he feared most. Not evil people, but tamed people. People who've been taught that their strength is dangerous, that ambition is arrogance, that wanting more is a sign of pride instead of life. Nietzsche believed in the will to power, but he didn't set mean conquest or cruelty. He meant the deep drive to shape your life with intention, to move forward, to say yes to difficulty, to overcome not others, but yourself, to live with a will that is creative, not reactive. Because the truth is, without that will, even the kindest person becomes a shadow, not bad, not harmful, just faded. You start living by default, accepting the path handed to you, the job, the role, the routine. You silence the voice inside that once said, there's stats more than this. Maybe you've felt that silence. Maybe you've ignored it because it was too painful, or because life got too busy, or because every time you tried to assert yourself, someone told you to calm down, to be realistic, to be grateful. But Nietzsche would ask you, whose voice is that really? And how long will you keep shrinking to please it? You are not here to be manageable. You are here to become, not to dominate the world, but to rise above the part of you that gave up too early. To reclaim your will is to stop waiting for permission. It sets to remember that life isn't set something that happens to you. It sets something you shape, moment by moment. It starts small, saying no when you used to say yes, pursuing the project that scares you, speaking the truth you have swallowed too long. This is the beginning of power in Nietzsche's highest sense, not the power of the tyrant, but the power of the creator. In our final core section, we turn to Nietzsche Sepp's boldest idea, the Übermensch, not a superior person, but someone who has transcended the old stories and built a new way of being. Imagine this. You have let go of the old illusions that life is fair, that goodness guarantees reward, that you must shrink to be accepted. You've seen the game and you've stepped out of it. Now the question becomes, what comes next? This is where Nietzsche offers his most radical and inspiring idea, the concept of the Übermensch, often mistranslated as Superman, but far more profound than that. The Übermensch is not someone with more power. He or she is someone with more authorship, not a conqueror of others, but a creator of values, someone who has transcended the morality they were given, not by rebelling against it blindly, but by rising beyond it with clarity and will. The Übermensch is the answer to nihilism, to the emptiness that comes when old beliefs fall apart. Because when the old gods die, when the cultural stories lose their power, we can either fall into despair or we can create. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." The Übermensch lives with that why, not inherited, not imposed, but chosen. Then that is your challenge, not to become superior to others, but to become so deeply grounded in your own truth that you no longer need to imitate or obey or impress, to rise without becoming cruel, to lead without becoming false, to be powerful without hiding your soul behind a mask. This is ethical power, and that set's rare because it requires something harder than domination. It requires transformation. The Übermensch doesn't look like a superhero. They might look quiet, focused, centered. They don't need to talk about greatness because they steer living it. They don't need to tear others down because they are too busy building. They have walked through the fire of doubt and meaninglessness and come out the other side with a will that burns steady. So, what does this look like in your life? It might mean taking responsibility for your direction, not waiting for approval. It might mean letting go of inherited guilt and choosing values that truly serve life. It might mean creating something that doesn't yet exist, a business, a movement, a philosophy, a way of being, because the world you were born into is too small for who you are becoming. This is Nietzsche Sepp's ultimate invitation. Delmestet just critique the world, surpass it, not through violence, but through vision, not by mimicking power, but by becoming a source of it from the inside out. The Übermensch is not a fantasy. It is a direction, a horizon, something you move toward every time you choose courage over comfort, truth over performance, and self-authorship over conformity. You and that arrive all at once, but the path begins now in every small act of will, of clarity, of creation. Next, we bring it all together. We still return to our original question: why do the worst people seem to succeed? And how can we rise ethically in a world that often rewards the opposite? Let Seps close with clarity and with challenge. So, why do the worst people seem to succeed? Why do the cunning rise while the kind are overlooked? Why does the world reward masks over truth, ambition over care, domination over dignity? Nietzsche never denied this painful pattern. He named it. He stared into it without flinching, and in doing so, he offered something rare, not false hope, but a deeper kind of clarity. Throughout this video, we have explored 6 core insights drawn from his work. One, that morality and power don't always align, and that the world often rewards domination, not virtue. 2, you view within us, there's a battle between master morality, rooted in self affirmation, and slave morality, which teaches us to fear our own strength. 3, that modern society has mastered the art of domination in disguise, rewarding those who play the game behind a mask of virtue. 4. That the belief in a just world is comforting but dangerous, because when life proves unfair, we break. 5. That good people often lose their will, not because they lack strength, but because they've been taught to fear it. And 6. That the path forward is not submission or rebellion, but creation, the challenge of becoming the Übermensch, a person who leads not from ego, but from inner truth. This is not easy work. It's not the kind of change you post about online. It sets silent, inward, slow, but it steps real. It steps the moment you stop asking for permission, the moment you stop performing someone else's idea of good, the moment you reclaim your will, not to dominate, but to build, because that steps what Nietzsche ultimately wanted, not more tyrants, but more creators, people strong enough to face the chaos of life and still choose to shape it, people honest enough to let old lies die so that something more meaningful can take their place, people who understand that power is not the enemy, but the instrument of transformation. So here sits the question I'll leave you with. What would your life look like if you stopped hiding your power? If you stopped waiting to be chosen and chose yourself fully, fiercely, with quiet resolve, not to prove anything, not to conquer, but to become the kind of person you were always meant to be. That is Nietzsche's Sip's Guide to Greatness, and it's not reserved for the elite, the loud, or the ruthless. It's SEP's available to anyone who is willing to face the truth and rise anyway. If this journey spoke to something deep in you, subscribe, not because you say supposed to, but because you vet becoming someone who seeks truth, who reflects, who rises. Leave a comment. Tell us what struck you, or sit with it in silence. Sometimes that sep's even more powerful. And remember, you are not alone in this work. We walk this path together, the path to power, what Nietzsche knew that most people deny